This is Isaac Morehouse. Welcome to the podcast where we discuss education, entrepreneurship, big ideas, how to put them into practice in the real world, and above all, how to live free. One of the great things about having a podcast is it gives you a pretext to ask interesting, smart people questions that you're curious about and just hear their take, hear them riff on something. And it's something that you wouldn't normally in conversation, even your close friends, you wouldn't just necessarily say, hey, give me your thoughts on, X, Y, and Z. But a podcast gives you an excuse to do that. And it's really fun. So I am experimenting with a new type of sort of special episode. It's some smart people say some stuff. And I get some ideas every once in a while about concepts that I'm thinking about and different ways to utilize those concepts to improve my life, help me reach my goals, etc. And I love to hear other people's takes on those. So today, some smart people say some stuff about backup plans, the concept of a backup plan. And what's great is I asked a baker's half dozen. I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm going to say it's a thing. A baker's dozen is 13, right? 12 plus an extra. Baker's half dozen is 7. It's a half dozen plus an extra. You get what I did there? Brilliant, huh? Anyway, I asked just the first people that came to mind, all within, like the same day, over email, over Voxer. Hey, what do you think about the concept of backup plans? And I didn't give them anything. I didn't say, I'm doing an episode where I talk about the dangers of backup plans, talk about the pros of backup plans, good kinds, but I just said, what do you think of backup plans? And what I love about it is whatever comes to people's mind, whatever they think of responding with, and everybody responded within a day or two. Some of them right there on the spot on Voxer in the middle of a conversation. I just stole what they said and said, I'm going to use this on a podcast. And others emailed it to me. It took a little bit more time to think about it. But what I love about it is, it can seem that there are 7 different contradictory opinions about backup plans. And maybe some of them do contradict. I happen to think that they don't. I am obsessed with taking every idea and every viewpoint possible and not asking whether it's right or wrong in some objective sense, even though I believe that there is an objective reality and objective truth, but asking, in what way can this be useful to me? How can this analogy, how can this metaphor, how can this way of viewing this concept be useful to me? And I find all 7 of these takes incredibly useful in different ways, in different contexts, and at different times. And it's really, really interesting. Some of the comments are, backup plans are essential. They're really valuable. Here's why. Some of them are, backup plans are terrible. They're holding you back. And it's really interesting. And I don't think any of them contradict personally, but I'll let you decide for yourself. So I'm going to let you hear each of these individual takes. I'll give a brief intro to, super quick intro to who the person is that is sharing about the concept. Let you hear their take, what they sent me, raw and unedited. And at the end, I will give a quick thought of my own on backup plans. And maybe you can extract some wisdom from this. I hope so. I hope you have fun with it. I absolutely loved getting these from everybody and putting this together. I think this is really cool. And I hope to do this more with additional concepts. So first up, we have Albert Liu, and Albert is, he's actually guest host to this podcast before, as well as he's been interviewed here, and I've been interviewed on his podcast. Albert's the host of the Power and Market Report, and you can find him on iTunes, on SoundCloud, and Albert gives his take on backup plans right now.
Hey Isaac, your buddy Albert here. Thanks so much for giving me this great topic. It was very fun to think about, actually. I hadn't really thought about it quite this way before. My take is basically a backup plan can serve one of 2 broad objectives. One is to avoid a complete failure, and the second is to ensure success. And I think it's the second of those that is relevant to most people. But I'll start with the first, to avoid complete failure. An example I'd give you is if you're an engineer designing a nuclear reactor, you need a backup plan if things go wrong. And it's definitely a situation where you're aborting your mission. So it is a failure in the sense that you're giving up, but you can save the situation by not literally melting down. And so that's one type of backup plan that is very important. But for most of us, I think the backup plan or the plan B should be thought of as just another way to achieve your main priority, your main goal, your plan A. And so I would start with plan A, and I would ask, first of all, if you really know what you want, because many of us don't, especially when we're young. So for instance, your plan A may be to go to med school, but really what you really want is perhaps to be a doctor. Or maybe what you really want is just to heal people, or just to help people. Or maybe you want the prestige of being a doctor, or maybe you just want the money. Whatever it is, I think it's important that you kind of go through all that and figure out what you really want, so then you know what your real plan A is. And it's not just with careers, it's with everything in life. Sometimes we pursue things without really knowing what we want. You may want to get married, but then later find that really what you just wanted was companionship, or you wanted a family with children, and really all you wanted was someone to mentor and nurture. So I think that's a helpful thing to do, is to go in and really understand what we want with plan A. And then the backup plan is just another path to that same goal, because obviously life is unpredictable. Things happen. You may lose your job. You may suffer an illness. All kinds of things can happen that will derail you from your objective. And I think plan B is just another way to get to that goal. And I think it's important to have one, because it's really uncomfortable, and I experience this myself at times, when you're really focused in on something and something comes along and just knocks you off course. If you don't have something immediately to fall back on, it's really disheartening. But if you have something, basically a plan B, backup plan, contingency plan, whatever you want to call it, that you can immediately fall back on and keep pushing ahead, I think it's very helpful to keep you motivated in achieving your goal. I'll leave you with this quote from Warren Buffett. And it's the 2 rules of investing. You may have heard of this. Rule number 1 is never lose money. And rule number 2 is never forget rule number 1. And I think in this case, I have a similar rule. And that is with plan A, be honest and realistic and sincere about what you want. And with plan B, never lose sight of plan A. That's all I got, Isaac. I hope it helps. Take care.
By the way, it's worth mentioning that when I asked everybody, I said, hey, give me 2 minutes on backup plans. And some people came in at 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Some people came in at 5 or 8 minutes. Pretty interesting. And I knew that would happen. I specifically said, give me 2 minutes, because I know in most of our minds, 2 minutes is like just quick thoughts off the top of the head. But if you're like me and you say a lot and you have a lot more bouncing around in there than you realized about a topic, or you process verbally, it can take a few minutes longer than that. But all of the clips that I got were just so good that even the ones that were 5 and 8 minutes, I did not edit down because they're awesome. All right, next up we have Cameron Sorsby. And Cameron, for some context here as well. Oh, and for Albert, I think it's interesting to know where people are in life. Albert is really successful in business, and he is probably, Albert, don't get mad at me, 40-something. Cameron is in his mid-20s, and he works with me at Praxis. And Cameron gives his take on backup plans right now.
So thinking back on my relationships and past views on backup plans has actually surprised me quite a bit, because between my high school and college years, I would have described myself as someone who would have taken a more conservative professional path, someone who had a low risk tolerance, and certainly someone who would have been scared off by, going more of a entrepreneurial route, being involved in starting and growing companies. So even having said that, when I was, in my teen and early 20 years, I was actually never really focused on coming up with a backup plan. And I always paid attention more to trying to figure out what makes me come alive. How can I kind of mesh together both my passions and my professional life? Because I kind of had some early self-knowledge at that age that I knew I wouldn't have done a career very well or any type of job if I wasn't, truly passionate about it and 100% committed to it. So even though I had that conservative background and mindset at an early age, I never really developed an affinity for backup plans. And the issue again came to light when I started working for Praxis about a year ago, and people were very excited for me. They were proud of me for kind of taking this step and being involved in an interesting company like Praxis. And at the same time, they tried to kind of warn me that this path might be risky. And it was interesting to me because I never really looked at it that way. And this kind of summarizes my views on backup plans, where if you go into something, your ideal path, and even if you don't know if it's going to succeed, the personal growth you'll develop from that is going to be much more valuable than trying to map out 2 or 3 different paths and backup plans that you can take. At the end of the day, the long-term value, you're going to gain much more of that long-term value from going after what you want now.
Thank you, Cameron Sorsby. Next up, we have my brother, Levi Morehouse. Levi is the founder and CEO of Ceterus, with a C, ceterusinc.com. Very, very successful, incredibly fast-growing company that does cloud-based accounting and bookkeeping services for small businesses, primarily franchise owners. And Levi is a little older than me, so mid-30s, well, not quite mid-30s, 34, and married, has 5 children, has a business, so that gives you a little bit of context from where he's coming from. So let's hear what Levi has to say about backup plans.
Backup plans. This is a very interesting topic to me professionally, as I think everyone has a different tolerance for risk in their life. And a backup plan is a great way to feel more able to go and pursue what you want, knowing that the landing is not going to be as hard as it might be if you just hadn't thought about failure or changing plans or changing paths. So I'm going to throw an analogy. I like to compare it to like rock climbing. Not that I'm a great rock climber, but it's a great analogy in my opinion. So I think of like the ultimate no backup plan guy is the free climber who's going to just scale a giant cliff with nothing but himself, his fingers, his toes, his grit, his energy, etc., and try to get to the top. And that's probably the fastest way to the ultimate peak. It's also the way that's most likely to cause massive injury or death if you don't succeed, if you get tired, if the wind blows. Anything could happen in your control or not that will lead to catastrophic results. But again, if you get to the top, not only is it amazingly personally validating and amazing, it's also everyone looks and says, wow, that guy really is tough and has bravado and courage and everything else, maybe a little crazy, but we love that. It's a great story. I think that's very few people that want to free climb it. So now you're left with people that want to take a helicopter up, which isn't really very cool to anyone, or climb it but put some safeguards in place. So to me, backup plans is, using some rope, putting some pegs in as you pass certain spots, making sure that if you fall, it's not catastrophic. And again, that can be done in various degrees. You can do it a lot. You can spend a ton of time putting the safeguards in place, having the backup plans in place, or you can do it, just enough to keep from dying. So you put those in just at the spots where it'll keep it from being a catastrophic fall. That's where I fall. That's where I think success is best handled, by taking risks that are large, and a setback will actually be pretty painful because you're going to be way further down the mountain or the cliff. You're going to struggle to get back to where you were, but at the same time, you didn't slow yourself down on the way up as much. But yeah, you are avoiding that catastrophic result. As you get higher and closer to that peak, maybe you do that a little more often. So again, there's a lot less to risk and lose lower down. So maybe you're a little riskier. You don't have as many backup plans. That's kind of my take on it. And then ultimately you get to the top, you had some safeguards, and you go that way. What I would absolutely advise, and this is what I think a lot of people get into, is creating a ton of backup plans, meaning I'm not going to scale just this mountain. I'm going to go up a little ways, set up some stuff to make it easier to get back, and I'm going to go down and go try another mountain and another one and another one. And now you've got all these different actual paths. My one thing on backup plans is have a 100% clear objective. And the only backup plans that I'm okay with are the ones that are on that route. So you're on the route to your goal. And if you slow down a little bit to create a backup plan on that route, I'm not opposed to it. If you get off the route to go make a safeguard and a backup plan, that is not, in my opinion, the way to succeed. So backup plans are fine. The amount of pegs you put in, the amount of safeguards you put in place on your path is kind of a personal preference thing. You can have very few. You can have a lot. People with none, I think, are crazy. People with a ton, way too many, I think, are crazy. But there's a huge in between there that is just a personal preference thing. But the one thing I would completely advise against is not having that one set clear path. So know what you want. Go and get it. If creating some backup plans on that path pop their head and make sense, then do it. In my case, personally, I had a college degree. I decided I knew what I wanted. My degree was in accounting, and it was going to take a little extra work to get my CPA, to get my license as a CPA. I knew that was a huge backup plan. Where I was heading was financial. It was accounting. It wasn't going to hurt me to have a CPA. It wasn't taking me off the path. It slowed me down. I had to spend many, many months listening to boring CDs about the CPA exam, poring over books, spending a few days at the exam, a couple times in my case, and ultimately getting that CPA designation. Now, that's a great backup plan. That peg is way behind me. I don't even know that it would catch and help me from where I am today, but it gave me comfort, peace of mind. At the time, it made sense. I slowed down on my trajectory to get that backup plan. But again, it didn't take me off the path I was on. And I've done that several times as I've grown and built a business. There's certain points where you kind of you stop for a minute, you lock a peg in that says, okay, if things go the wrong way, they don't take us all the way to crash and burn. It's going to be painful. It's going to hurt. These pegs are spaced out. If things go poorly, it's going to set us back, but it's not going to destroy us. So anyway, that's my take on backup plans.
Next up, my colleague, Zak Slayback. You can go to zakslayback.com. He works with me at Praxis as well. Zak is 22. He was on a scholarship to an Ivy League school, and he was bored and unhappy there, and he dropped out, started working with Praxis, and one of the most talented, hardworking, productive guys that I know. So here's Zak's more radical take on backup plans, and he's actually written an article on this. I think if you Google Zak Slayback, burn your backup plan, you will find it.
There's a popular notion out there that you should always maintain some kind of backup plan. Now, this backup plan can be going and getting a degree so that you can say, oh, I can go and I can fall back on my degree. Or it could be maintaining your day job while you go and you pursue your startup, or anything like this, right? People even maintain backup plans in relationships where they won't go after the person they actually really want to be with because they're afraid of rejection. So they're just going to stay in a mediocre relationship that really doesn't make them all that happy and leaves everybody else less well off than they would be otherwise. But your backup plan holds you back, and it holds you back in a number of ways. It holds you back psychologically, mentally, and emotionally. Psychologically, it holds you back because it prevents you from taking those kinds of big risks that are required to have high payoffs. If you actually want to live an ambitious and full life, one that isn't just above average, you need to take big risks. But those big risks come with the chance of having big failure. That's the flip side of risk. But when you hedge against taking these big risks and maintain your backup plan, it prevents you from giving yourself fully to the options that you want to pursue. These options are things like going all in on your startup, or going all in on a relationship, or going all in on your dream to travel the world. Yes, traveling the world is something that's incredibly risky. And if you try to maintain a certain backup plan of, well, I'm going to, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back and work my job as an insurance salesman at Northwestern Mutual every day. It's going to make it impossible for you to actually go out, quit your job, and pursue your dream of traveling the world. Hold you back mentally by preventing you from giving yourself giving your full psychological and mental attention to pursuing these things. If you constantly are thinking in the back of your mind, oh, well, what if I fail? Well, I need to also be working on my backup plan at the same time. You're going to find that this is exhausting. This compartmentalization is not something that people can easily handle themselves. And finally, it holds you back emotionally as well, because it prevents the highs from being high, and it also prevents the lows from being low. Most people maintain some sort of backup plan because they don't like the idea of the bottom falling out from under them. But having the possibility that the bottom is going to fall out from under you, and that hard psychological and emotional strife that will bring you, is what allows you to have the highs that make it worthwhile. So your backup plan's holding you back, whether it's holding you back from just being happy or from actually achieving your goals or giving yourself fully into your goals. It is holding you back, and you need to burn it.
Who have we next? Yes, Jeff Till. Jeff Till blogs and podcasts at 500years.org. Here is Jeff's very thorough and interesting take on 3 different types of backup plans.
Hi, Isaac. This is Jeffrey Till of 500years.org, fulfilling your request to talk about backup plans for 2 minutes. What I'd like to talk about today is actually 3 different types of backup plans. One are very simple backup plans that tend to be the makeup, risk mitigation, and resiliency strategies in business. Number 2, very complex backup plans for personal or business life. And then 3, one of the most clearest and most empowering backup plans, which is called the status quo. So starting with the first one, some very simple backup plans are simple things that you think up through to mitigate risks that you might have in your life or in business. So for example, my company always has a continual risk that we will be overbooked, meaning we will get so much work in that we won't have enough people to complete the work, and then we will then upset customers because we can't meet their deadlines. So the simple backup plans for that is we have a couple people we can call to chip in and do extra work. We have me as someone who could get on the bench and do the billable work if need be, and then we always have the possibility of just working extended hours. On the other side, if we have the risk of having not enough business, I have to keep in the back of my mind that I can either push sales through some kind of formal way, or I have to think about firing someone rather, or cutting back on their pay, or doing something else to make sure I don't put the company in financial jeopardy during that time. And you could go through all sorts of different simple plans like that. The easiest one for both personal and business life is to have some savings. So anytime you go through a rough patch or something doesn't work out, you have money to fall back on. And that would be the same thing as if you were deciding to do something big like start a business or change jobs. Having money in the bank is one of the best backup plans to ensure that if things don't go quite right, you have a way to pay to eat and pay your rent. The second one I wanted to talk about are very complex backup plans. And the problem with very complex backup plans is they're usually made because there's either little faith in the primary plan, or they're actually designed to be the primary plan, or the primary plan is so either undesirable or too risky or too presumably danger-laden to be pursued seriously. And my personal story with this is when I graduated college and moved to Boston to find a market to become a musician in, I also did an extensive amount of planning to find a full-time corporate job. In my thinking about this, I thought, I'm going to have to work 40 hours a week. Either I can make $7 an hour at Dunkin' Donuts, wearing a name tag and a hat, or I can make twice that sitting at a desk doing graphic design or helping outbound mail campaigns or some other kind of real function. And the backup plan also included the idea that if my musician career didn't pan out, I would still be on a good path to have a real adult career, make money over the course of my lifetime, and be able to do other things that people like to do
such as have a family or buy a home, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in reality, my plan to become a musician was the weak part, my primary plan, because I didn't really know what was entailed. To become a musician, a composing, performing musician, the passionate part about writing music and playing what you want is a very small part. You also usually have to have a mixed income of giving lessons, playing in a wedding band, and doing other things that didn't appeal to me. Plus, it was very high risk. You would have to subject yourself voluntarily to extreme level of poverty over a very long period of time with no guarantee that you'd ever be able to train yourself out of it. And you also have to be willing to squander the whole opportunity of having that regular grown-up job, because it's very difficult to spend 20 years being a smelly musician and then turning on a dime at the age of 40 and say, I'm going to join the corporate rat race. That's almost impossible to do. You're almost unhireable in many ways just because of your age and your past decisions. So really, my very complex backup plan was really the risk-averse primary plan that I just didn't realize at the time. And so the only thing I could advise there is just be very cognizant and very thoughtful and aware when you're coming up with an elaborate backup plan and an elaborate primary plan to really know and think about what you're going through. Because there's a good chance that if your backup plan is too thought out, too complex, that you're really sending a signal to yourself that you don't want to follow your primary plan. Okay, the very last thing I wanted to talk about was the status quo as the backup plan, and I think this is very enabling and very powerful. So if somebody has a new plan to, say, launch a business, change jobs, move 1,000 miles away from their home to a new city, or if they're going to do something else like decide to homeschool their children, usually the backup plan is whatever you're currently doing before the change. So if you're worried about starting a new business venture and you don't have one right now, if the business venture fails, all that happens is you revert back to the guy who didn't have one. Maybe you've lost some money, but your backup plan is just whatever the crappy thing was you're doing before. If you wanted to leave your industry and go work for a new one, and it doesn't work out, the worst that happens is you just have to go back to what you were doing. This was very true for me when I first moved to Boston from my hometown in Michigan. I was very afraid of the change, and everyone was like, what happens if you fail? What happens if you don't get the job? If you can't pay your rent? If for whatever reason you flame out? And eventually I realized that it was, I just pack up and I go back home, and I'd be just like the same as if I had never taken the change. I could always move back home. And that means it was very empowering, because the worst thing that can happen on making the change is that nothing changes at all. Does that make sense? And so that was the same as with homeschool. When we took the kids out, it was like the worst thing that could possibly happen is they'll have to be in the same crappy place they are right now, which is the public school system. So when you look at the backup plan as being your crappy current status, your current status quo, it really shows you that there is no risk in doing something new. So, and again, another example, and it was much easier this time. When we moved from Boston to South Carolina, it was the same thing. If the worst thing that happens is we don't like it, and we just go back to the place where we wanted to change, but then didn't get one. So anyway, that's my thoughts on backup plans. Overall, pretty handy things if you're just thinking about risk mitigation. Something to be very thoughtful of if they're complex and look like they're bigger than your primary plan. And then thirdly, a very empowering view of the status quo that says the worst that can happen is nothing happens at all. There it is. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Well, bye-bye to you as well, Jeff. Thank you very much. So next is TK Coleman. And in fairness to TK, unlike everyone else, this is actually the conversation that gave me the idea to get a bunch of smart people saying something about backup plans. TK and I were having a conversation on Voxer, one of my favorite apps, who I'm still waiting to sponsor this podcast. Voxer, give me a call. Give me a Vox. I don't even know what we were talking about. And TK just kind of went off on this little preacher riff specifically about the idea of college as a backup plan. And you'll notice Derek, TK, Cameron, Zach, myself, those of us who work for Praxis, we all sort of have a bit more of a negative view on backup plans, specifically relating to this idea of college as a backup plan, because we run into it so much with so many people. I'll save my thoughts, but this was taken out of a broader conversation on Voxer. I downloaded TK's message to me. I cut this part and I liked it so much. I thought I want to get a bunch of other people's opinions on backup plans. So here's TK on the idea specifically of college as a backup plan.
And then there's this concept of the backup plan too, right? Well, okay, you got a business idea, you got a business opportunity, but go to college at least for your backup plan. That's your backup plan. And my problem with that is twofold. Number one, what's the backup plan to college? What's the backup plan to investing 4 years of your life into something that might not work out? Because if there ain't no guarantees, there ain't no guarantees. And we already know from a lot of people out there who've gone to college that it didn't work out the way they wanted it to. So what's the backup plan for that? But also this whole idea of a backup plan is based on these old school notions of failure, that if you go out there and you try something, you pursue a dream, you spend 3-4 years chasing after some business, chasing after some girl, chasing after some dream, whatever it is, that if it doesn't work out, then you have to start all over at ground zero. You just wasted 3-4 years of your life running around trying to do this and that. And in reality, when you go after something that you really want and you fail, you start off more like at ground 50 because of the wisdom and experience that you have, or even just the interestingness that characterizes your personality. You develop personality. Think about how many young people don't even have personality. They don't know how to win a room. They don't know how to be interesting. They just lack the ability to build rapport. They're not interesting. They can be smart, but put them on a podcast, and it's like, can you be interesting, though? Are you interesting? Think how rare that is, man. It's like you don't start at ground zero. You start at ground 50 if you fail. The backup plan is the wisdom that you gain from the failure. Failure is the backup plan. What's your backup plan in case you fail? To build on that failure. Failure is the backup plan, man.
And finally, before I give some concluding thoughts, Derek Magill. Derek dropped out of the University of Michigan and went to work on a marketing company of his own. Then he joined Praxis. And after Praxis, he was hired full-time by Praxis. He is our marketing director. You can check out derekmagill.com. He's very active on Quora as well. All-around interesting guy. Derek gives his take on backup plans.
So the problem that I have with backup plans is not so much that, they're a backup plan and you have, an alternative to your, your plan A or your first option. My issue really is with the way that they're looked at today and the way they're sort of applied in everyday life. This is sort of particularly and sadly evident in the average college student whom, if you talk to, they'll say something like, I don't really think college is that useful, or I'm not really having a good time here, or, I'd rather go be a businessman, or I want to be a freelancer, or I want to be a travel blogger, or, any number of things that they want to do that might not necessarily require a college degree. They'll tell you, but I'm in college because a college degree is a backup plan, and I need a backup plan in case my plan A fails. And for me, this is always sort of ridiculous, considering the fact that, most of these kids are paying anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 over the course of their 4-year degree to go to this school. Meanwhile, they've spent no money over that period of time on their plan A. And this is not what a backup plan is supposed to be. A backup plan is not supposed to be something that you spend money on before you've even attempted your plan A. A backup plan is more like insurance. But the way most people treat it today is like if you would buy car insurance before you buy a car itself, which is, it's ridiculous. So for me, a backup plan can only be useful if it's viewed primarily as something that is cost low while you're pursuing your plan A, very cost low, and that is understood more as an insurance policy than anything else. And I think if you look at it like that, there might be some value in having one.
All right. Hey, that was actually a lot of fun. I love that. I hope you enjoyed it as well. So you probably heard that and you thought, well, geez, all of these older gentlemen, Jeff and Albert and Levi, all of whom own their own businesses and, have children. They all seem to have these reasonable perspectives about the value of backup plans. And all these guys that are working for Praxis are just crazy. They're like, oh, no backup plan, no backup plan. Well, maybe that's true, but I don't think it is, actually. I actually think everybody that contributed to this episode probably would agree with everybody else who contributed. It's kind of just how you look at it and what context you're dealing with it in. TK, Derek, Zach, Cameron, and myself, as I mentioned, we just see a lot of people with just soul dead eyes saying, I'm hating every minute of my life. 1 year into college, I got 3 more left, a whole ton of debt. I'm bored. It's horrible. It's soul sucking. I'm dying here. It's not what I want to do at all. I want to start a business. I want to do this. I want to do that. But I guess it's a backup plan. And that's where we say, what the heck? How has this concept of a backup plan gotten so twisted? So my own personal take, I don't like backup plans in that way. I find backup plans, actually, I'm gonna go a little more bold than that. I'm gonna say I don't like backup plans in general. I think if you focus on building a backup plan, it's really dangerous. Here's why. I think you are your backup plan. You are your best backup plan. The things you develop and become in pursuing your dreams, or in simply staying away, as I like to say, don't try to find what you love if it's too hard. Just don't do things you hate, and just avoiding things you hate and doing things that make you feel alive, just staying away from things that make you feel dead. What you become in the process is your backup plan. The network you build, the skills you build, the confidence you gain, the knowledge you gain, everything that you gain in pursuing things that don't make you feel dead inside, those are so valuable. They create its own safety net, backup plan for you. They're more valuable than a specific and unrelated second career option backup plan, right? So if you're focusing on building and many people touched on this, a highly specific backup plan, you're actually destroying everything that would make you good at plan A, right? So I'm going to give you a concrete example that I see all the time. The worst backup plan I've ever encountered in my life is law school. So many people, they finish undergrad and they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm not sure. I might want to be an artist. I might want to do this. I might want to do that. Maybe I like marketing. Maybe, who knows? But because I don't know, I want to have a backup plan just in case. So I'll go to law school, because then no matter what I do, I'll have all kinds of options and I can make tons of money at any time. That is the worst backup plan ever, because it destroys everything that would enable you to succeed at literally any other plan. In almost all cases, there are exceptions, but law school is so highly specialized, it's so intensive, it's so costly that if you come out the other end 3 years later, you've got $200,000, $300,000 in debt plus, and you need to make enough money to service that debt. And the only thing you're qualified to do that will earn you that amount of money at this point in your life with all that specialization is like merger and acquisition paperwork or, corporate law. If you love that, great. But if that was your backup plan, now you're stuck doing that because nothing else will pay the bills. I'll pay off my debt, and then 5 years later, I'll do something that I love. 5 years later, you'll be making $250,000 a year, and you'll have a mortgage that will consume all of that, and a car and a lifestyle, and you won't be able to downgrade your lifestyle and go into a job that starts at $40K. I know so many lawyers who are like, they just feel trapped. Yes, I have a good income, but I'm kind of a slave to my lifestyle, to my income. I'm not flexible. So the backup plan takes over your life, consumes it. And if your backup plan requires you to develop skills, attributes, traits, habits, networks, etc., that are actually counterproductive to your plan A, then I would say just push that thing aside. And plan A, if it's something that you care about, or it's the exploratory process to figure out what you care about, it brings with it its own backup plan. How many people that have really gone after founding a company and have launched a startup, and after a year or two it failed? I've written about this before. Just because the startup failed doesn't mean the entrepreneur failed. In fact, they almost always will tell you they're way better off for having tried that. And what it gave them, now they have a much different network, a much different level of respect with people around them, a skill set that's really unique. Not many people have tried to start a company and have started one and run one for a couple years or whatever it might be. Not many people have raised venture funding. Not many people have even tried. What they become, who they meet, what they gain is its own backup plan. I think that's what TK meant when he said failure is your backup plan. Not like, oh, well, failure is great. Nothing like that. But that who you become by not settling, by not just saying, well, I don't know, I guess I'll do something I hate just in case. That's where you really gain the ability. If you go out and try things, whether or not they succeed, who you become in the process is so valuable and allows you to do so many other things if it doesn't work out. So that's kind of my take on backup plans. I mean, there's a simple incentive or almost moral hazard problem. You think of the great, Batman, The Dark Knight Rises scene. Like you can't climb out of the prison when you have the rope on, because you know that if you miss the jump, you'll still live. When you cut the rope, you have to make the jump, and that makes you able to do it. And there's an element of that. But I think, like Levi said, that's not every spot in life at every time. There are times where you don't want to fall all the way to the ground. But there are times where you need to. There are times where you're so stuck in a rut, you're never going to get out if you have a safety net, if you have a fallback, if you have a, well, it's not going to hurt that much, so I'll just halfway try. I'm not going to try all the way, because even if I fail, it's not going to, you need a little skin in the game at times as well. And I think backup plans that become overly detailed, overly complex, and that start to dictate who you become, they are detrimental. Plan A, as Albert Luz said, always needs to take precedence. Hey, this was a blast. I absolutely loved it. I hope you guys liked it as well. Send me some topics. Go to isaacmorehouse.com or isaacmorehouse@gmail.com. Send me some topics you'd love me to have, and even some names of people that you think would be cool to give me a little riff on that topic.